Hi, I'm Tom McCullough. Welcome to Algebra Simple. Now this is an introductory video that was put together for the student and for the instructor. Now when I say the instructor, I'm going to be the one who's teaching you this year, but this is meant for the person who's giving you tests, monitoring your tests, and giving you grades. This is for that person also. Now this will be helpful for the student, but it'll also be helpful for the instructor. Now, Algebra Simple is a methodology that I have been working on for over 15 years. I have been teaching algebra for over 15 years, and I have developed systems that will make algebra a lot more simple. Now, I know no matter what you do, algebra is reasonably difficult, but this is going to make it a lot simpler than you've ever learned algebra before. There's 57 videos that have been put together, and they've been put together in segments that will make it very decipherable. Now let's discuss the book. The book is an open source book that has been written by a man named Tyler Wallace. He's done an excellent job in my mind. This is, when I say an open source book, it's free. And you can have the book for free, and if you don't want to take this course, that is just fine. And Tyler Wallace has put together an excellent book, like I said, but his methodologies of teaching algebra are different than mine. And he and I are usually in agreement, but often we're not in agreement. But these videos have been put together so that you don't really need the book. Now you'll need the book for homework and a few things like that. You may like to follow me along in the book because I'm going to be using the same examples, or for the most part the same examples that Mr. Wallace uses. But the book that you'll be using has been heavily edited. It's Mr. Wallace's book. It's not my book, but it's been heavily edited. You're going to find that whole paragraphs are missing. Pages are missing, and even chapters are missing, or a series of chapters are missing. Toward the end of the book, you're going to find that a lot of it is missing. And the reason for that is Mr. Wallace includes a lot of Algebra 2. This is not an Algebra 2 class. Now I have numbered these videos using the same system that Mr. Wallace does. We're going to start off with A1, A2, A3, A4, and then we're going to go to 1.1 and on like that. But my videos are, for the most part, they're going to follow each chapter. But then we're going to get into some chapters where I think he's covering a lot of material in one chapter. And sometimes I divide that into 2 videos, and I think at least in one case I divided one of his chapters into 4 different videos because we're just covering so much material. Now the videos range in length depending on the matter that we're covering. Some of the videos are 6 to 7 minutes long, and the last video that we do is over 30 minutes long. And some of them get a little bit lengthy. I would say about 1/3 of them are 20 minutes or more. Now you're going to develop your own system of watching these videos. I do suggest you watch these videos more often than once. But you may want to watch a video all the way through to kind of get a general sense of what's going on. The second time you watch the video, I hope you're hitting the pause button. You may even want to do that the first time, but hit the pause button. Work through this video with me. Do the problems with me. Don't let me do all the work, and then when you start homework, you're completely lost. By the time you get through these videos, you should have a mastery of the subject that has been taught. So now let's discuss how to set up your class. This is your class, not mine. I am simply teaching it. You set this class up any way you want. Now a normal school year is 36 weeks long. That means that if you're watching all of these videos and doing 2 per week, you're going to have this done, 2 to 3 weeks early. But then you're going to need that time to study for tests and things like that. Now, the tests have been set up in a variety of ways. The first test is set up after 4 classes, 4 videos, and that's kind of normal. But some of these tests have been set up after 6 videos. Some have been set up after, I think, 3 videos. And so each test is going to be a little bit different. But I've divided the tests up into segments that we're teaching. Like if we're teaching how to do a graph, all the graphing videos, at least it's my memory, all the graphing videos are on one test. However, anything that you have been taught in this class is subject to be on any test. All of the pre-algebra things that I'm teaching you for the first test, they may be on the last test. I'm not promising anything one way or the other. The tests are the tests. I'm just telling you, don't learn something and then figure, well, I don't need that anymore. I'm not going to say you may need it, you will need it. Now there are 14 tests. That means if you want to divide this class up into semesters, which is what I like to do, then that would be 7 tests in each semester. But it's going to be an uneven number of videos. There's, I think, a lot more videos in the second semester. Now, to assist you in your studies, like I said, we have the book, but I've also included a dictionary. And these are terms, most of the terms are from the book, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are terms that Mr. Wallace has left out that I think are important. So all the terms, all the dictionary terms are in the videos. So you can write them down there, or you can keep track of them with the dictionary that I've included. It's not a lengthy dictionary, but there's quite a few words that you need to memorize. They will be on the tests. I think all of them are going to be on the test, 100% of them. I'm not guaranteeing that, but if it isn't 100%, it's 95%. Now on the test, when I ask you to define a word, I expect you to have a general sense of what that word means. It doesn't have to be exact. If you want to do that, that's just fine. But I prefer that you have a general sense of what that word means. I'm not sure what the value of those words are on the test. They're going to be about 2 or 3 points. The problems that I ask you to solve are usually going to be 5 points. Now this is the way I grade tests. Again, this is your own class, and for the instructor, you can grade in any manner that you think is fair, or this is your class. You grade it any way you want. But this is what I do, is if a student has not tried to solve a problem and they leave it blank, that's -5. That's -5 out of 5. If they have a general sense of how it was supposed to be solved, but they got the answer wrong, even just dead wrong, that's -3. In other words, I give them 2 points for at least having a sense of how this was supposed to be solved. Now I give 3 points, that is +3 or -2, whichever way you want to look at that, if they have the answer generally correct, but it should have been positive and they put negative, or it should have been negative and they put positive. Maybe there's a series of variables. A variable is A, B, C, on up to Z. And maybe they left one letter out. Maybe an exponent is incorrect, but they got it mostly right. Okay, I give 3 points for that. Or I only take 2 points off, whichever way you want to look at that. Now, I give 4 points. I only take 1 point off if the answer is correct, but it isn't simplified. Now, we're going to get into that later on in the year, or actually pretty early in the year. And that would be like 6/8. Well, 6/8 is supposed to be reduced to 3/4. So if they got the answer correct, but it wasn't reduced, it wasn't simplified, or it wasn't factored or something like that, but they got the answer correct, I'll only take off 1 point. And then, of course, 5 points. I give 5 points, or I take off 0 points, whichever way you want to look at that, if they got the answer perfectly correct. Getting back to the dictionary words, if it's worth 2 points, I will give them 2 points if they have a good understanding of that word. I will give them 1 point if they have half an understanding of that word. I hope that makes sense. I think I'm an easy grader. Not too easy, but reasonably easy. And the reason is this material is difficult. Algebra is difficult. I mean, unless you have a math mind, algebra is difficult. Now, I don't think this class is difficult, but algebra in general is difficult. So, I demand that they learn a lot of very difficult mathematical methodologies, but I don't demand that they be perfect. The other thing I do is, well, all the points on a test will add up to 100, which makes it real simple, right? You get 2 points wrong and you got a 98%. But the other thing I do is, and again, this is for the grader, if their work is very orderly, it's not messy, and it's done the way it's supposed to be done, I give them 2 extra points. And so that helps them get a little bit higher grade, and it also helps you to look at their material to see, do they seem to know what they're doing? And that means that if you get a perfect test and you're not messy, you can get 102% on your test. And I don't hand out a lot of 102%. I mean, that's pretty difficult to achieve. But I in my day over the past 15 years, I've handed out, I don't know, 20, 30, 102%. Now, the last subject that we're going to be covering is calculators. Calculators are very personal. Some people hate calculators. Some people love calculators. I fall more toward the category of I love calculators. And this is why I love calculators. If you know how to use a calculator and you take the SAT or ACT, well, you got an advantage over everybody else. The SAT and the ACT, you can take a calculator, and as a matter of fact, it's my understanding, you might check this out yourself, but it's my understanding you can take several calculators in there, and I use several calculators to do my work. Personally, I look at it this way. If someone asked me, where was the first battle of the Civil War fought? And let's say I don't know. I do know, but let's say I don't. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to my computer and I'm going to type in Google, I'm going to type first battle Civil War. And there's your answer, right? That didn't take me 15 seconds. Now, what if somebody says, well, that's unfair, and you don't understand how to look things up, so I'm going to travel down to the library, and it's a 20-minute trip, and I'm going to go through all of the books, maybe ask the librarian to help me research this. Does that seem to make any sense? Well, when you're not using a calculator, that's essentially what you're doing. You're basically making math harder for yourself. On the other hand, it's if you don't know how to do this work and you're just using a calculator, that's not good either. And this entire course is taught without calculators. I'm not saying you can't use a calculator, you can. But you won't see me using a calculator until the last video. This class has been set up so that you can use calculators or not use calculators. But the last video, you have to use a calculator. And if for any reason you're an instructor who does not believe in calculators for whatever reason, that's up to you. This is your class. Just skip that last video and just cross out the last couple of questions on the test so that the student doesn't have to do that. Because I guarantee you, there is no option on the last video. You do need a calculator. For all of the other videos, you do not need a calculator. They will help you. You'll be able to do a lot of this work well, you'll be able to do almost all of this work faster. But here's the rub. I said calculators will help you with the SAT and the ACT. They're not allowed on the ASVAB. That's A-S-V-A-B, ASVAB. If you don't know what the ASVAB is, that's basically the test you take to get into the military. Now the SAT and the ACT are tests you take to get into college, university. And the ASVAB is a test you take to get into the military. They do not allow you to use a calculator. So you better know how to do all these calculations without a calculator. So even if you run through this entire course, this entire class, Algebra 1, without a or with a calculator, and you're using a calculator on everything, you better know how to do this without a calculator. And I've set the class up so that I think you're forced to do some of these things without a calculator. Now the two calculators that I use are the TI, that's Texas Instruments, 30X2S. And that's a reasonably cheap calculator. I don't know how much it costs. I think $15 or something like that. And it does 98% of the work that the graphing calculator does. Now for a graphing calculator, I use the Texas Instruments TI 83 Plus. But there are plenty of good graphing calculators out there. And any calculator you feel comfortable with. Like I said, even on the last video, I don't really use the graphing calculator. I use the other calculator. And so if you already have a graphing calculator, I wouldn't sell it or I wouldn't trade it in. I wouldn't get what I just advised you to get. Now the reason why I use the 83 is because it's cheaper than the 84. If all things being equal, I prefer the 84. It does a couple of things that the 83 doesn't do. So that is the introduction to my class. I think you're going to really enjoy it. You're going to enjoy it more than anything else you've done before as far as algebra goes. And God bless you, and I hope you are really successful in this class.